Okay, so we're recording, we're live, and we've got Wynne here. Maybe Chris, you could just sort of do a brief introduction and what you're all about.
Yeah, well, my name's Wynne. I'm from Australia. I'm a Luthier, been building for 28 years. And when I first started building, I was using traditional woods like spruces, rosewoods, mahoganies. But what sort of struck me was strain tone woods. And sort of about 3 or 4 years into my learning to build guitars, I decided to start to try some Australian tone woods because as I found out, we have got a rich resource of Australian woods. But what has helped me in my career is that having used the traditional woods, I actually owned a very, very good Spanish classical guitar that I bought in 1985, that I bought in London. It was actually padlocked to the wall. It was like really strange to be going into a shop when they're padlocked to the wall. But for me personally, that gave me a lot of training in what sort of sounds professional players would like, and definitely what sort of woods work really, really well. So that sort of started me off in this career, as I call it, the last 28 years in building and also teaching people how to build guitars.
Right, and I mean, we're all fairly familiar with some of the back and sides woods from Australia. Obviously, Australian Blackwood, the acacia is the most famous one, but I gather that they're much, much more than that.
Yes. I mean, this is the thing that, again, over the years, we've just got such a rich resource of acacias, especially. And acacia is a very, very well-known species around the world, with the Blackwood, as you said, being very closely related to koa. So if you showed someone some Blackwood from here in Australia overseas, they'd probably think it was koa. So they're very, very close as a species. And then it sort of comes off with other, and I think out of all the acacias in the world, I think Australia's got 900 out of 12 to 1,300 acacias. That, to me, when that number sits in my head, I think, how many guitars could you possibly, or variety of woods could you possibly use for guitar making?
Right.
I couldn't do it in my lifetime. I've sort of sat with a number of woods that I really like, that I'm very familiar with, but it really is endless, and we're very, very lucky that we've got such a great resource.
And you've also got a whole bunch of different eucalyptus species as well.
Yes, as I say, it's I've had many people ask a similar question about, would this particular wood work, with this particular wood work, and eucalyptus is another one, and I'd say it probably does, but again, for me, I don't have the time to be researching every tree we've got in Australia. But as I say, it's a huge country. A lot of the area is very dry. Some of the trees are very slow growing, but down in Tasmania, which is a beautiful part of Australia, very wet and damp. So that's where you'll get like the darker Blackwoods, because they're down in the swamps, and they're a lot wet. The moisture in that's a lot wetter, and that creates a darker Blackwood that you'll get. But yeah, it's almost, sometimes I want to think about it, but I don't want to think about it because I could use anything. I always say to my friends, don't ever invite me around for dinner, because if it's a good table, I'll probably cut it up into guitar shapes.
Well, what are some of your favorites?
Well, definitely Blackwood. That was the first guitar that I built with Australian timbers, was Blackwood and Kingbilly pine, which is a pine that comes from Tasmania. Sort of sits between cedar and spruce as far as tonality and strength. It's closely related to California redwood. Then I would say, you've got your Queensland red cedars. For fretboards, we've got Gidgee and Mulga, which are, again, very, very dense woods. I mean, I've got a piece of Gidgee here, and not that you can see how dark. The thing that's with our woods, and I do like about them, with ebony, and again, ebony is a great fretboard wood. Our woods, as in this Gidgee, it's probably hard to pick up on the camera, but it's got a lot of figure. And that's not sort of the traditional thing that people are used to. Acoustic players, yes, I'd say they'd be sort of more, attracted to that, but classical are very traditionalist in the way that they, like their woods. So that's always been a thing. But for me, I love Mother Nature giving you this palette of colours as well, to work with. And I mean, there's tiger myrtle, which I've got a guitar behind me out of tiger myrtle, which again, it's another beautiful wood. There is just so many, but at the moment, if you want to call me where I'm at with the guitar making, I love using a timber called Cuba, which again is related to Blackwood. I've actually got a guitar here, which I'll just quickly show you. And that's Cuba, that's the back of it. Very dark chocolate color, tonally a little bit, not as dense as Blackwood. So you'll get a bit more of a warmer resonance with it. Very easy to work, and it works really, really well. So if you said at the moment, what was my favorite wood, I'd say probably that at the moment. But then, hey, next month might be something else.
Something else, yeah, absolutely. And how about topwoods? Because you mentioned King Billy pine.
Yes, well, we've got King Billy pine, we've got bunya pine, we've got celery top pine, we've got Huon pine, we've got hoop pine. There's 6 or 7 varieties of woods you can use. And again, it's just a matter of, the main 2 that I would say I'd be using would be bunya and King Billy, because again, bunya is very much like spruce tonally. It's got but again, visually, it's very, very different. It's not sort of that clean white look.
Right.
And then you've got Huon pine, which you said it's thousands and thousands of years old. I think it only grows 3 to 5 millimeters a year in growth. So if you're going to plant a plantation of that to make money, it wouldn't be a good idea because it takes forever to grow. But again, it's a beautiful, beautiful wood. But yeah, they're all my favorites, so to speak. But those 2 are definitely my favorites: King Billy pine and bunya.
Right. And how do they sort of compare to the traditional spruce and cedars? Because I've had some in my hands, and they seemed a little bit sort of denser than what I would sort of usually use for spruce and cedar.
Yeah, definitely. The bunya is definitely a little bit denser, a little bit stronger than spruce. But for me, that's not a bad thing because you can lighten the top a little bit more.
Right.
Using a brace wood, you can actually obviously lighten that as well. And the same with as I was sort of saying about the King Billy pine, sitting between cedar and California redwood. So it's a little bit denser, but you've got that little bit, a little bit of strength that you can play with. And it's got a very big bottom end King Billy pine, which I really, really like on guitars. But yeah, what you're saying is very correct. But to me, it allows you to sort of experiment a little bit more. Because really, when you look at the history of guitar making, when I say history of guitar making in Australia, but with Australian Tonewoods, it might be 30, 40 years old. It's not very long that people have really started to look at an alternative from the traditional woods and starting to use Australian Tonewoods.
And in terms of bracing, are you using native species for bracing as well?
Yes. I'll use bunya for bracing, hoop pine, which is another really good tone wood that I've been using. So at the moment, I'm using a lot of hoop pine for my bracing for my tops. King Billy on the classicals. But yeah, it's like I'm sure any maker, you're always experimenting, but you're always interested in what different varieties of woods can do through different combinations. Right. So I've always read, the great makers always seem to sort of stick with a certain timbers like rosewood, spruce, and mahogany, ebony, and they would do that for the whole career because they learned how to use those woods and how to tonally get the responses that they need. That's probably what I'm saying. We've got so many, it just sort of spins my head a little bit. So I'm trying to control this. I'm getting on in my age. I'm thinking, I need to slow this down because if I had another 20 years of, up my sleeve, I'd be probably trying a lot more. But I'm happy with what I'm doing.
Okay, cool. Maybe we can see some of your guitars. Would that be okay?
Yes, I'll grab the acoustic, the Tiger Myrtle. So this is a Tiger Myrtle back.
Oh yeah, very nice.
Which is just beautiful. And again, it's probably, down in Tasmania, where it grows, it's the only place you can get it. They're not really sure about how the actual figure happens. With Blackheart sassafras, that's King Billy pine on the top. The bridge is what they call bull oak, which again, commercially is the hardest wood in the world. So this is a combination of a bit of, again, I started using bull oak during lockdown last year because I didn't have anything else in the house. And I couldn't get to my workshop size, but now I'm really, really pleased with it. It really came out well. So, but that's a, you know, that's just stunning.
Yeah, it is.
You just can't figure that. Yeah. And this other one, this is obviously the one that you'll know, Blackwood. Very dark. So this definitely came from Tasmania, what I said about being in the swamp area. So that's why it's got a darker look about it. And now this will be, as I said, about the bunya, very different. So that's bunya.
Right.
But then bunya has such a variety of colours and things, you know, that goes through it. Sometimes you can get it definitely a lot lighter than that, but I just like the appeal. To me, this particular classical itself looks very earthy. It's got a very sort of earthy, and that's probably why I like it. So, and a Blackwood neck on the back of it. So
nice. Yeah,
but they're just a couple, and I've got here. Let's knock it over, and and I'll see, as I showed you before, the Cuba, which again you can see how very similar it is to that Blackwood I just showed you, how very dark it is. And again, King Billy on the top, very clean King Billy, and again, sorry, full oak on the fretboard again, and and a bit of Cuba for the rosette. So that's the one that I just got back from Andrew York. Very kindly did a video of him playing it, and it's a Torres copy that I built again during lockdown last year. So it was great.
Nice. What's the story behind that?
What behind Andrew York? Well, I tend to have these moments where people sort of in conversation will say things to me, and I'll just go, yeah, I'll do that. And I was working in the workshop one day, and a student said to me about Andrew York, and I was playing a particular piece called Home, beautiful piece that he'd written. And I was saying about I was building this Torres guitar because I'm doing a documentary, hopefully next year now, with the great-great-grandsons of Antonio Torres. And I thought about getting Andrew York involved because I saw on the Guitar Salon that he played the Torres guitars. And I just sent him an email, and he responded. I went and saw him and his lovely wife, Annie, for about a week, about 18 months ago. Showed him one that I'd made. He liked it, which was good. And then I went and just, you know, over that period of time, just getting to know him and again about the project, which he's going to be part of with the documentary. I sent him this guitar about November last year. So he's had it, I only just got it back last week. And he's had it, and he was playing and getting some feedback for me. But it's exciting because one of the things is the documentary is about if, again, Antonio Torres or any of the great makers had access to our beautiful woods, would they have used them? Well, my answer is yes, I'm sure they would have. And that's part of, you know, what I'm planning to do is building a guitar in Spain with Australian Tonewoods in Antonio Torres's workshop, which will be amazing, as you can imagine.
Absolutely.
So, so that's how that's sort of come about. But again, it's just part of what I do. I'll say, they just conversations. I just get ideas. I recorded a CD back in 2016, and every guitar on it was made from Australian Tonewoods. So it was the first guitar, or CD, I should say, recording that every guitar was built from all these varieties. I think it ended up being 23 different varieties of woods on all these guitars. So all these guitars that we've been talking about, all these woods we've been talking about were on all these guitars, and it's just an amazing, you know, journey for me. You know, after that sort of dream of having them on the world stage.
Right. And speaking of world stage, I understand that you've got a French adventure coming up.
Yes. I bought a property back in November 2019, an old school in a little tiny village in the south of France in Saint Salvador. And I'm going to be moving over there this year and basing myself in France, selling Australian Tonewoods, building with Australian Tonewoods, supplying people in Europe with our beautiful woods. It's a very, very exciting chapter, as I call it, in my life. I've sort of feel I've done what I need to do here as far as with woods, and yeah, it's just a really nice thing to be looking forward to. And as I say, it's been a dream really to have a place in France.
Absolutely. I'd like a place in France, to be honest.
You can come and visit.
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure. And what's going to happen to all your stuff in Australia?
Well, I've been teaching international schools in Europe for the last 10 years or 12 years. So I've got a workshop over there. It's at a friend's place where I usually would teach. So at the moment I'm selling a lot of my things here, and as I say, I think I've got more tools and I've got a lot of wood already in France. So it's not going to be a hard setup for me to get going. And you know, so basically, yeah, I'm having a bit of a wood sale, a bit of a tool sale, and sort of packing my stuff up because yeah, it's going to be a permanent move, and I've just come home to see family at Christmas or whatever I might do. But yeah, I'm really excited about this new part of my life.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for catching up. We look forward to speaking with you again. Yeah, so thanks. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sort of let you go?
No, just one, it's lovely to meet you, of course.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I mean, we've been messaging each other for a while, but no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to do this.
Oh, no, absolutely. Pleasure's all ours, and all the best for your French adventure.
Thanks, Jared.
Great, thanks.